public online in media agencies, and therefore whatever shortcomings and bottlenecks found should be overcome. And therefore the last aspect of the mass media is to play as watchdog of political narratives and to create a public arena for debate where we question the existing outcomes. And finally, my argument is that the media can be developed as the eyes on the ground. They will, by working together with other agencies, they will have information which is correct to the larger extent and more truth claims of brought forward rather than myths. And here we should not really sensationalize the disaster, but provide who is the most needy person and how much aid is required. And this role is proactively played by all stakeholders, and collaboration is the need of the hour. And absolute media blackouts cannot happen because some information always comes out by word of mouth. So by getting all stakeholders together and working together, we can actually have a better disaster response. And the way our future media is organized, that will determine how well we can respond to disasters. And this has to be in national, international, and local context. So when you finish reading my paper, that is the final argument, and I would like to take any questions.
Why you have taken Katrina as a model, not India?
So in India, I have taken it because lack of time I didn't discuss it. But particularly in the aftermath of 26/11, they say that it was the mediatized terror action, and they completely started blaming the media, whereas our own systems have no mechanisms of working together with the media. So therefore, journalists will get any data that they bring out. So if we had a policy in place and we had practiced them earlier, this kind of reaction would never have happened. So I have argued that, but since I don't have that much time, I couldn't really present it. But they say that because of this very reason is why we must include the media in all our disaster management plans and practice it.
But the focus of the argument is whether you are talking about natural disasters or man-made disasters.
So it is not just
both.
It is not just natural and man-made. I have also argued that it is political.
So mass media approach is different for both, not the same.
Correct. Correct. But they are formed as a system of disaster
The
response.
sense of approach is different.
Correct.
Man-made disasters approach is completely different. So Katrina, when you compare with Katrina, you can't compare 26 whether both are not the same. One is expected, one is not unexpected.
Absolutely, sir. But the crux of the argument here is that the way the media responds to this disaster will determine how the outcomes are done. So we can actually have a better outcome where they say that this media response in India actually curtailed our future security options, whereas by this continuous argument against the media, we actually deny them the possibility to work together in the future disaster management plans. So whether it's natural, man-made or political, we must include them and use them as tools of better decision making and disaster practices.
Event or post, whereas the role of the agencies which have to play a greater role begins earlier from prevention. So you have a bigger role to start with than trying to put the blame on the media.
That is why in the initial phase when I talked about the academics, they suggested that it's in 3 phases: pre-disaster education, where they spread methods of earthquake safety and other disasters. During the disaster, they provide information, and after the disaster, they tell us where to go and what are the safer places, what is the kind of logistics that are coming in. So it plays a role right from the beginning. It just cannot come in between suddenly. So the need is to develop a plan which is right from the beginning and lessons learned also. So after the disaster, we need to continue our working with the media. It doesn't happen as a single event. It's like a comprehensive, altogether plan.
We have a distribution panel from senior journalists, and I invite Mr. Somsekhar, Bureau Chief from Business Line, please come. Mr. J.V. Umanand, Bureau Chief, Second Draft. Mr. Prabhakar Sharma, now freelance journalist, earlier was Bureau Chief, Indian Express, and also in Hindu. And Mr. Murthy, Head of the Department, Mass Communication Journalism, Andhra University. also have Mr. Himanshu Shekhar from NDTV.
First of all, thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to share some of the views of senior journalists. And like the first speaker said from IIT Mumbai, he said there's no system, that's why the media is blamed, and actually there is a system. Only thing is it's not organized. Okay, and so during the 70s, when the Divasima cyclone was there, we never had mobile phones. Only one relief center at Hyderabad and a makeshift center at Vijayawada. Cameramen and producers and reporters, we used to depend on print media, and only All India Radio was there. They used to have only 2 bulletins. Though the system was in place, it was not well organized. And then came 80s, we had satellite links, then mobile phones, DSNGs. In 2015, now we have in recent Chennai, heavy rains. They used extensively the social media and also the citizen journalists, and 4G also was used with the 40 MB speed. 2016, you will see a different picture altogether. All the DSNGs will be replaced. You will have mobile with 2 cameras. Both the reporter and also the scene can be captured using a split screen. They can directly give it to the mass control room. No need for a satellite link, which means the transmission time from the scene to the audience is less than 1 second time difference. That's all. They have to just decide whether to put it on air and do it. It's faster version than the satellite phone, and you don't have any buffering also. So it depends. Like INCOIS has approached the government of India to set up a disaster management center in their premises itself in Hyderabad. And the Delhi Meteorological Department is in touch with Doordarshan and All India Radio. They have agreed to set up a disaster management center in the broadcasting center itself, so that they can broadcast immediately. And all the departments will coordinate. It's not that the journalists go behind people and get the information. For journalists, it's given immediately the information, and they broadcast it. See, there's competition with more than 200 channels, with a number of newspapers, multi-editions, and active social media. It's also difficult for a business organization to survive in the competition. So people are evolving various ways and means to reach out to the audience. To share more information, I think I'll invite Mr. Somsekhar, Bureau Chief from Business Line. Earlier he was with PTI Hyderabad, and he was also with that Hindu Business Line at Delhi for 8 years. And I got it as first generation science journalist. Very few, only Indian Express and Hindu used to carry the science articles. There is a need to give the scientific perspective for the disasters also. Okay, why? What are the reasons and all? I think he puts the facts in proper perspective to the audience, and I'll ask him. Like some of your stories also prompted the government to change their policies or introduce new policies. So now, in the 2015 scenario, how do you visualize, the disaster management policies and what media can do?
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Very good evening, I should say. It's nearly 6 o'clock in the evening. My dear distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to come back to this university for a very long time. I distinctly remember having covered several conferences as a young reporter in PTI. From Hyderabad, I came and covered events here. I would with the consent of the chair, take 10 to 15 minutes and pardon me for indulging in a bit of self, analysis and experience sharing, so that I can, narrate how a natural disaster perhaps can be covered by a journalist, and also what are the lessons that a journalist learns as he writes stories, and how those stories perhaps can lead to a bit of policy firmness, and also learnings which can firm up certain preventive measures. Let me begin with a story which I covered in 1993. It was September 30th. The day before, some of you remember, the Latur earthquake struck, a huge part of, interior Maharashtra. Early morning, there was a jolt. I was happily sleeping at home far away in Hyderabad. There was a sudden creaking noise in the glass panel in my house. I woke up, but did not think anything big, so I slept. An hour later, when I heard the morning news, the radio was stating that there was an earthquake in Latur. Now, what did I do as a reporter? I, being in Hyderabad, called up the National Geophysical Research Institute, which is one of the most important places where you get information on seismology and earthquakes. Then they told me that there was an earthquake in Latur. So during the day, we were only getting information about what is the earthquake, what is the epicenter, and so on. So it so happened that that day evening, one of our most distinguished science journalists in India named Dr. K.S. Jayaraman, he had come to Hyderabad along with a team of journalists from Delhi. Now he was asking me, how far is this Latur from Hyderabad, and can we go there? I said it will be around 200, 225 kilometers, and definitely we can go. So next day morning, we both took a taxi and went to Latur. Imagine, you're in 1993. When we went there, the site from a few kilometers from the town was, the roads were totally, caved in, broken, and as we went in, there was an eerie silence. A lot of buildings had collapsed, a lot of people were outside. The destruction which I saw as a reporter at that time was, I can't forget. Typically in those times there was no communication. All communication, whatever, if you remember, it was only telephones, STD and so on was gone. There were a lot of deaths. So we went, talked to people, then saw what is, in store there, and then did not know how to report. So how do we do? It was a pre-mobile era. There was no mobile telephone. So at that time, the senior journalist who had more experience than me, he saw an army, camp there. So he said the army chap definitely should know, and communicate. So we went there, and he asked the army chap, we are journalists from Press Trust of India. We would like to communicate this news to the country. So they agreed. So he gave us a satellite telephone. That was the first time I ever held a satellite telephone, and the cost of communicating using satellite telephone is extremely high. But he obliged. So we called Delhi and told, what had happened in Latur, and that story was put out. That was one of the first stories which perhaps told the world that, this is what happened in Latur, the devastation and so on. There are many journalists, many NGOs who came there, who covered the event. Now, why I am taking this example is, why this earthquake became important. As a science writer, I realized that, the seismology information, knowledge about seismology states that the Deccan Traps, where we all live, is the most stable in the whole world. So there are very few earthquakes, so we all thought that we were under a very comfortable place. So what Latur did was, it jolted the geophysicists and seismologists out of their slumber. So earthquakes can happen here also, therefore we are not safe. So that is one big learning. Second, how does one cover an event? How does one communicate in this kind of an event? So I divide it into two parts. One is the science part of it, which means you write about the earthquake, the intensity, the magnitude of the earthquake, the epicenter, how do these waves travel, what is the kind of impact, and so on. The second thing is the human aspect of the entire thing, that is, the people who have been affected, the lives lost, the economic loss, and, relief, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and so on. If you know Latur, the area is, most of the houses are built using stones which, they get there, they cut it like bricks, pile it in a home, and then use some binder, whatever concrete, and build houses. So why so many people died in Latur was the earthquake had, shaken these buildings, and these loosely piled stones, collapsed like pack of cards. And when the earthquake occurred early in the morning, most of the people were sleeping. So these houses collapsed on them. Now, the lesson there is that if you build houses which do not, withstand any tremor, then you lose a lot of people. So these are some of the human aspects that you need to cover. Interestingly, that was my last story as a PTI reporter in Hyderabad. Then I moved to Delhi. Exactly a year later, I got a chance to go to Latur again, because the Housing Development Corporation brought journalists from Delhi, and they wanted to showcase that, we have done a lot of houses which have helped people in rehabilitation. So we went there, and to our great surprise, as my friend from IIT had said, that media perhaps to give stories which create panic, or it propagates myths and pushes fear into people. When we talked to some of them, they were given good houses, but they said, we are sleeping, we would rather sleep outside than inside the house. The reason is that the fear that the earthquake might come back and it might fall on their head was so rampant. And ladies and gentlemen, if you know, in 2015 Nepal earthquake, there were 60-70 aftershocks. That means the big earthquake had smaller quakes. So the people experienced this kind of a aftershock which gives that fear. So what we learned was this fear and this experience of people need to be put in, so that the agencies which are involved in relief and rehabilitation also learn. Now, after 1993 and 94, in 2001, I was in Delhi when on a January 26th Republic Day morning, we were happily sitting in a time when I was asked to come back to Hyderabad. So everything was packed and we were sitting at home, and suddenly people from the neighborhood ran outside. So we were wondering what happened. Then they said there is an earthquake. So I was sitting at home, as usual. I am not one of those who is very sensitive to earthquakes. So I also went out, and then there was some calmness. I came back and I saw we had a rocking chair which we wanted to bring to Hyderabad. It was in the center of the hall. Now that rocking chair had moved. So I was wondering why this rocking chair had moved on its own. Then I saw the roof of the house ceiling, there were cracks which were widened. So what I'm trying to tell you is the earthquake that happened in Bhuj was felt in Delhi. Okay, so what again I did as a journalist was I went to the India Meteorology Center, IMD, called NGRI, then did some stories, and then came back. No. So imagine the kind of impact, the kind of challenge that an earthquake of this magnitude can pose to people. So in short, what as a journalist, as a communicator, I would like to bring to your notice is, the few things that we really need to cover so that it will help the policy makers are. One is the impact on the human life. Most often reporters go and say so many people have died, so many people are injured and so on. So we do this as a routine reportage. The second thing that we need to look at is what is the loss to the economy and infrastructure that an earthquake or a natural disaster does. The third thing is what is the damage to crop, animals and so on. And finally, what is the impact on communications. The second aspect that all of us would like to see is what is the relief and rescue operations that have been done. Most often in any natural disaster, one of the first things we see is there is utter chaos. People who are affected are in one state of mind. People who are fast to recover, they get into some sort of a relief. We most often do not have organized relief and rehabilitation teams. Thanks to the National Disaster Relief Force, today we have more experienced people. So the role of NGOs, the role of groups of people, volunteers who jump into relief and rehabilitation is one aspect which gives us a lot of lessons to learn. The third is the collaboration between the government agencies and the relief organizations. There are many sob stories, many stories of corruption, many stories of criticism on this front. The third is the social media which has come into force. Krishna Rao has already given you a flavor of what is the role of the social media. And if you looked at the Hudhud cyclone itself, there are so many visuals, so much of information that came into public domain because of social media. You can see Facebook, Twitter, and also the WhatsApp, playing a big role in all this. The ham radio, which earlier used to play a role, is now come down. So this is about the various things that we can cover, and from this, we can help people who have to play a role in terms of prevention. For example, in earthquakes, is there a forewarning or a forecast of an impending earthquake? Journalists can write stories. Is there a seismic hazard map? Today we have a seismic hazard zone map, different zones of risks and so on. And finally, there are building codes and material that can be used for construction, which helps in proofing these structures from earthquakes. So in all these, journalists can write and help policymakers and people who can help in prevention or better relief and rehabilitation to do a better job. And also by highlighting stories, we can sure play a better role in our communication and journalistic skills. I think that's a little bit of insight I can give. Thank you very much.
Any questions, please? Normally, how the editors respond?
I don't find many follow-up stories, after a major disaster. So after 1 week or fortnight, the story is no more stories related. And they say, if you say disaster, weather means, oh, is there any loss of life? If you say no, okay, let's see later. That's how they respond. What do you feel? How to change the mindset of some of these editors?
I think that is very interesting because most often a disaster makes big news, but once some other event or something else happens, we forget people. But as a journalist who, thanks to that Hutco chaps taking this 1 year after, I realized that it requires the interest of the journalist to make the story interesting. Otherwise, people are not at all interested, because in India we have crimes, we have bigger crimes, we have corruption, we have bigger corruption. So we keep forgetting. So I think we need to present the story in a more readable fashion and talk about how the people affected have played a role in making things better and improved the whole area and reconstruction or whatever to make the story good. Otherwise, it will not catch the attention at all.
Now go to the next speaker, Mr. J.B. Ubanath, Bureau Chief, Deccan Herald. He has rich experience both in print and electronic media. He was with News Time, ETV, Hindu, Sakshi, and also with ICRISAT at Hyderabad, a development journalist. Mr. Ubanath.
Hey, disaster and media, we can't be kept away most of the time. Wherever we are, it's disaster, or where is disaster, we are there. There was our bureau chief in ETV long time back. He's a fashionable man, always wearing a white pant and white shirt. We got a pouch he used to keep here and then cover. Like any other bureau chief, he was in the office most of the time, and we had the fun going out covering disasters. There was a railway accident in which an ex-CM of Andhra Pradesh was involved. So this man is very much sure that I to jaunga hi aaj, karke aaunga story. What you guys do is do that editing properly. See, that editing is done in Ramoji Film City even those days. The bureau was in Hyderabad, the editing was done somewhere else. So instructions were very clear. Bhai, I am going to send you a piece to camera. The end of the accident, he will be standing and then he will give a piece to camera. See that it is there. By the time it went and all, 9 o'clock bulletin has come and his portion was not there in it. So he was very angry. Bhai, kya hua? I gave you the piece to camera. Where is my piece to camera? We called the editor. The video editor, sir, in the end, when TT was talking, sir, with a white dress and pouch here, and we cut it because the TT was talking. We never knew it's the bureau chief because the editing is somewhere else and bureau chief was never seen. So he thought it was a TT. So that's on the lighter way. This is how we work. And if a general reporter goes there, and it's entirely a different ballgame. So what I was thinking is like, I'm a development journalist, did a lot of development stories, particularly in Sakshi. That was our basic idea. When Sakshi interview was made, what he said, how you make the channel tick. I said, so far you concentrate on a poor man, the man on the street, the channel will tick. Because that's the stuff you do. There will be reporters who will be saying, because of the strike, I can drive my motorcycle very fast. That's a stupid observation. Whereas you ask a ready wala, then he'll tell you what, and band for 3 days or 1 week is going to affect him. So when I was browsing through like a media and disaster link, one good comment, a vision, I never had seen a vision before. And this is All India Disaster Mitigation Institute, Ahmedabad. They got a vision. What they're saying is to create a community of deprived and excluded citizens who will be made resilient to hazards. This is one part, this is our agenda. For all the journalists, now this will be the thing you will be doing it when you go out for a disaster, either man-made or natural, whatever may be the disaster. If you keep this in mind, I think you will be ticking as a reporter. So resilient to hazards, what you want to make the community resilient to the hazards, having their own coping mechanisms. See, you are creating their own coping mechanisms. This is beautiful. And then, so that we try to help them to recover on their own. It is not that you go put a mic, आपको मिला क्या? नहीं sir, कल से कोई नहीं आया. Revenue वाला भी नहीं आ सकता ऐसी हालत में. When there is water deep here, you can't expect that somebody will get you a pulihara putlam. That is not possible. So this is how we generally ask questions. So recover on their own, and this is beautiful. Access to public resources as their right. Not like, in many places, I don't want to take the names of those places where people have been treated like apartheid. So I was also thinking of this in another direction, that when we go for coverage, do all reporters get equal treatment? Do you get to sit in the CM's helicopter when he goes for the aerial thing and only 2 channels will go there and get the footage back to you? Do I have an insurance? I don't have an insurance. I certainly remember my daughter and family back home while I was jumping into a boat to go into Godavari. Now I don't have that facility. Do we have equal rights? No, I don't think so, that some people were preferred and some are not. Do I have passes? I don't have pass. Because I'm not an accredited journalist, I don't have a pass. So I was also thinking the direction that, okay, there are two, you talked very correctly about Katrina. It happens in many other places where things are prioritized. You've been categorized. the benefit comes to you only in certain areas, like our Deccan Herald Kashmir reporter was telling me when we had editorial meeting in Mysore. So how is it? He said, sir, you people have shown it very nicely that Indian army is doing good, but they were picking up their own men first. They were not bothered about us. Our grandfather died without medical facility. A boat was going, and we were asking, no, आपके लिए नहीं है. ये आर्मी वाले फंसे हुए हैं, पहले उनको तो निकाले, फिर बाद आपको निकालेंगे. No, this is something very difficult. And my friends, those people who are now journalists, saying budding journalists, no, you're going out there, then you have to fight. Now, how do you achieve this vision? This is a beautiful vision. This vision is to empower the people who are powerless. You are there to empower the people who are powerless. You are giving them wings. You are giving them info that could be used so that they can get out of that goddamn place. As simple as that. How do I go? When army is running after securing another army person, where I am? Now, where do this reporter stands now? Actually, this Kashmiri reporter doesn't have his connection. He got some Airtel, it didn't work. For 14 days, he was working nothing. And all the Delhi bureau people have did the stories depending on agency reports. Because he couldn't, because the network was working there. So, journalists have these problems now. Anyway, and that's entirely a different story. Now, what I was thinking about is before I get into the developmental part of stories that we should be doing, like many speakers were talking about Nepal and the insensitivity that we have. The one question that people doesn't like is, how are you feeling? When an accident occurs, a disaster occurs, you go put a mic and say, how are you feeling? Now, this occurred, now people are saying 128,000 tweets complaining about insensitivity, particularly on Indian media. Maybe we are also, it's also the same story, we were trying to portray our Indian army in a very bright light, forgetting about the developmental aspect. And when you ask, instead of asking how you are feeling, I think that certainly that man or that woman who's sitting in front of a dilapidated or damaged house certainly will have a story to tell you. Certainly will have some self-respect still left in them that you're missing to see. Whereas you think that tear-jerking things will get you an RPD rating, no, that's not the issue. And a positive story could really be good. But it's same again, the question you asked, how your channel will be feeling. Maybe your bureau chief will call you, editor will call you, क्या कर रहे हैं यार, ये लोगों को भेजा हुए तो developmental stories कर रहे हैं वहाँ जाके. अरे इतना सारे रोना धोना चल रहा है वहाँ, तू यार development के पीछे, वो तो हफ्ते के बाद करेंगे ना, अभी से क्या करना है? So this is another problem now. Now you also have to satisfy your boss who spent a lot of money sending the reporter by a flight to Nepal, and you trying to find out those people who saved a lot of dogs, lot of buffaloes, and he's smiling, चाहे कुछ भी हो यार, मैं तो हंसूंगा, मैं तो जीऊंगा, मेरे तो पूरा दुनिया इधर उजड़ गया है, मेरे बच्चे मर गए हैं, मैं तो जीऊंगा कल के लिए, और हो सके तो 10-15 और लोगों को मैं हेल्प करूंगा. If he's doing it, then this reporter will be certainly calling back. यार बस हो गया तो वापस आ जाए, बस good enough, you are not fit in there. So how do you deal with it? Like many of the things like Sarah just asked about, like why you don't show stories after a while, you stop declining. Some other event will cover now. Like now France will be covered by something else, now something else will become covered by something else. This game will be going on. But my point is still the truth. That you as a journalist, you work for that man who's standing in the long line for a cup of milk for his share. And the last man over there, and still stands with a hope. Mind you, I'm not that broady fellow that fights for milk. No. And what about the last fellow who doesn't have anything? If you still keeping in mind, you will be a successful reporter, you will successfully report a disaster. Now, if you don't do it, then there is a problem. Now, this, how are you feeling in this poor? And then the hudud. I am a student of School of Economics here. I did my MA Applied Economics here. Later on, slowly unemployment, and I become a journalist. Okay. And what I do, I am agricultural economist basically, but now doing journalism. Now in Hudud, this is a beautiful town. The reporters are very good. They were totally motivated. Some people came along with the Hudud, the warning. The people landed here from Hyderabad. They took hotels. Everybody said. Oh, what happened on the first day? Sorry to the government, local government here, our government, Andhra Pradesh government. From the second day onwards, the chief minister took over the journals. You are only telling what the CM is telling. He took over everything. He just hijacked the media Hey, it's not his fault. What he was doing, there is a 9 o'clock press conference, there is a 12, there is a 4. So you are ready set for the 1 o'clock bulletin. He gives you the total feed, he gives you footage. So he is meeting people around, he is doing this, electrical lines, ye, wo, sab, Pulihara Potlam distribution, something, fir 4 baje aa jao. Another press conference at the collectorate, 6 o'clock bulletin, you are ready. He will do another 8 o'clock briefing, so 9 o'clock you are ready. And by the morning you will do a current affairs story, you are done for the day. But what is happening here? You were supposed to do something else. The reporter is not simply to sit and then type. My bureau chief Nachiket Desai used to say in news time, उसके लिए तो स्टेनोग्राफी यार माना तू किस लिए जा रहा press conferences? So no press conferences at all. Don't go to press conferences. They say something, you sit and type. I need 2 stenos to do this job. Why I pay you so much money? You do stories, you go onto the street. No, don't think anything. Take a motorcycle, go get me a story. We used to do that. We learned something doing it. In Hudud, that has happened here. After a week, reporters are not working. अरे भाई 9 बजे यार वहाँ समोसा चाय मिल जाएगा, वहाँ जाए बैठ जाएंगे, फिर 1 बजे हो जाएगा, फिर 4 बजे 5 बजे खत्म story. And then what about the stories you were talking about? What about the resilience of people that we were talking about? What about those people who lived over without water, electricity? All the houses are washed away. So those are the places where you should have been doing stories of resilience and telling people that okay, this is how strong Visakhapatnam people are. There is not a single green leaf left here. But we were rallying around the chief minister and his party, doing stories of what CM is telling you to do. But you came for something else. I remember we went with the President of India to Mauritius. One business reporter came along with us. We saw him the first day and we saw him on the last day near the flight. We asked, why you were not covering President program? He said, I came here to cover Mauritius suitcase company stories. He used this platform, did a story on that. Reporters are reporters. That's the reporter. And we were enjoying dinners, buffets, dinner with an ambassador, and dinner with the President and Prime Minister of Mauritius kind of stuff. We were just doing what we were told to do, but there is a reporter. We saw on the first day and the last day, he did a beautiful chain of stories on suitcase companies in Mauritius. So a reporter has to do what he has to do. Do you have time, sir? Yeah, 2 minutes. Then what I jotted down, leave alone Katrina, because you covered Katrina well enough. I don't want to get into the apartheid insensitive with Nepal is covered. Bombay attacks, I think that live saturation coverage, the terrorist got tactical information from media. I think then one lesson that we have learned, things which you shouldn't do. I even remember these are big reporters in Mumbai were talking about. There are Mufassil reporters, which are small reporters who will be given a camera, will be standing in front of a TV. There's a pharmaceutical company, there is an accident in the reactor. So he was shouting, hey, there are no water cannons here, no water, this, and actually foam is to be used there. If you add water, the accident will triple and double. This bum should know that it should be a foam used now. Once that thought came up, the district collector was intelligent. He said, when he doesn't know, even I don't know. So what we should do is, there is a collective program now, only one company has in the cluster. So if there is a fire accident, that company will lend the foam machine to other companies. So this is one thing that you could do. If you know, that would have been your suggestion. So the Mufassil level, the training is more. So let's talk about the final things, about the training. Like you said, the training is needed, and how we do it, maybe curriculum in BCJ or MCJ. Maybe a paper, they may take an elective or something and write something on disaster management, maybe that's a good idea. And like army attachment camps for NCC cadets, have an attachment camp with NDRF, sir. Maybe send a reporter from each paper and you have an idea how rappelling has to be done. If a major incident occurs, how to do that. And then mobility is one issue. And then newspapers on their own, like in US, have a full page weather advice. Our weather bulletins are in the end, even the lowest trainee entry anchor will be given that job. Where it is a massive structure, give a weather advisory, इस जगह पे मत जाओ, कश्मीर में मत जाओ, या तो हिमाचल प्रदेश में मत जाओ, ऐसी जगह है, या don't go to Tirupati because there are boulders falling on the highway. Something like that. Have a much larger section in news and also in newspapers, like in other companies. That's all, sir. I think weather should be a bigger package. And then one thing is, as journalists, we should stop fear mongering. Kudankulam nuclear thing, nothing has happened, but we might have killed hundreds of people with fear virus so far. You remember the Fukushima Daiichi is a silent nuclear issue. I think that's how Japanese deal with it, a problem. In India, nothing has happened in Kudankulam. We have created it. We already blasted it 100 times so far. So be careful as a journalist and keep that lost man in mind, and you will be good. Thank you.
It's open for question and answers.
Maybe that's all.
Present medicine
Sir.
and state deputies for the disease. We have detected female Congo virus in Gujarat. In that context, I was busy with the lecture and just trying to take. For all media friends, one thing I want to share, in their kit, over and above the chips for the camera, there should be the sterilizer, which as far as possible avoid shaking hands. Say namaskar, our old Indian traditions. Keep, along with the water bottles and everything, keep sterilizer in the hand. If you go to any area where the dead bodies are there, and dead bodies are there with bleeding manifest on the body, it will be malaria, it will be dengue fever, or leptospirosis. But Congo virus is coming, and it is equivalent to more dangerous than Ebola. There is no threat of Ebola I see in the country. Patient will come, he will die, thinking doctors, nurse may die, outbreak is contained because there is no sustained transmission in the whole community. But this Congo virus I am telling, it is from the tick bite, tick which is there. If you lift the tail of the cow or buffalo, the ticks are there. As a reporter, you are going to disaster sites and you might be helping some persons, and without those you are touching the body, then it may be HIV positive patient and you are likely to get infections. So the humanitarian aspect must be there. At least keep one pair of gloves in your kit and one sterilium bottle. That's the message.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about, insurance to journalists who go cover this kind of things. Think about their welfare, and naturally all these things will come around with it.
Your community is so large in the whole country, there should be group insurance. If they will sit
No, state governments are doing it, certain state governments.
Sir, you gave an excellent presentation. Investigative journalism. If we give some inputs, probably you guys can do more good for the society and avoid such hudhud type of disasters in future. That is my intention of interacting with you. Now, because of bauxite mining, you are going for bauxite smelters. Small bauxite smelters need exclusive power plants, and I personally feel the third thermal power plant that's going to come up in Visakhapatnam district or city limits, probably a little bit away, that is exclusively going to supply power to the bauxite smelters. And Vizag will become warmer and warmer. And the more the warm it is, the chances of hudhud type of super typhoons locking on to the warmer land surface temperature where it's very high. It locks on and then comes on. That is the reason why hudhud has struck at the feet of Kailash Hill, or Lord Shiva. So, since you are talking about investigative journalism, it's an excellent concept, and you will be doing great service to this avoiding disasters. Does warmer China just do a thing? 50 years of solid research by Chinese people, and it's published in Nature magazine. And that is the hidden agenda. Whichever government is there, right from 2010, I've been very keenly observing what's going on. Bioreserve sphere was supposed to be at Chintapalli, where you are now having this bauxite mining. So please do your best, the media friends. I humbly request you, for the sake of Visakhapatnam and the 1,000 kilometer of coast all along India, try to avoid hot, temperature rising industries which which increase the temperature levels. And even in these areas, you could have at least go for vulnerable and non-vulnerable areas. Recently, I was watching some interaction, and I thought I could be of some help in when you prepare the draft resolutions or whatever. It will be helpful for the entire nation. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thanks for the session. There's nothing else I could add other than saying that it much depends on. Just let me answer him that. Just a second, sir. Let me answer him like it much depends on the management now of the newspaper, whether Boxset is pro or anti, Amaravati is pro or Amaravati is anti. And I write in my presentation that Amaravati is prone to earthquakes. There will be severe water shortage in Amaravati tomorrow if we build the new capital. And others says Amaravati is beautiful. This is Japan. This is nothing but Japan. Now what to do? It much depends on which newspaper I belong.
Just only 1 minute, sir. 97% of scientists in NASA and US, they support this climate change. I mean, what's going on, cause and effect. They say, yes, climate change is a happening phenomenon. Of course, 3% will always be there who contradict this, and politicians follow those 3%. Even Obama is catching his head. There is what is known as OFA. So here it is absolute scientific data, it's simple cause and effect, and there's so much of research. Unless you are enlightened as a political executive, center as well as state, we are going to be in big trouble in the coming years.
No second thoughts about it. Exactly correct. Yes, sir.
I'm from NGR, scientist, sir. I have done an seismic activity Indian scenario. Throughout India, I collected a number of artifacts and written a book on this.
Yeah.
I have communicated to all the journalists about my book, but nobody has responded to me. Frankly telling you, sir, don't misunderstand.
Yes, that's it.
Why I have spent 40 years of my service for writing this book. I collected a number of tactical data, just like Chinese are having 4,000 years data. Japanese are also having 4,000 years data. They are designing these structures according to their seismic algorithm. But their buildings will not fall. But why our buildings are falling? There is a lacuna in the data set. So government DST had given me 10 lakh rupees to write this book and collect all the data sets which are available in the Indian continent, Indian literature and foreign literature and historical from 6th
So
century.
you're right. May I say, okay, reporters didn't read it. Did the Uttarakhand government read this book?
Everybody.
No, if it does, it wouldn't have carved roads on a very unstable mountain.
This is for
They are boulder-ridden mountains which shouldn't have been. But when the traveling companies are collecting lakhs and lakhs, making 15 trips a day to all the Char Dhams, the government was forced to expand it and everything collapsed.
No,
Government's also not taking it serious, sir.
No, government I don't want. Press also should take care. The person who has spent a lot of time, lifetime, for the research.
They
for
should
the sake
read.
of the people. For the sake of the people, I have spent.
Reporters must be equipped, sir. There is no doubt about
I
it.
spent 8 lakhs for this book. Sorry to tell you, sir. No,
You give me a copy, sir, I'll read it.
Please listen to me and propagate
understand.
to the community of Indians at least. They should be safe because of the earthquakes. You see, in Nepal, one chunk of that buildings were very safe because they designed for this.
Yes.
The design program you have given for construction. They are asking me what type of scope sheet you please give me. I will give. I have given Bhatranam that Tehri Dam quotient.
Yes.
But they don't, media won't come and ask me, sir, what? They are going to the big shop and giving they will ask me what is the matter. I will tell, because he is a big man, I will tell, he is propagating his own works.
NGRA, getting into NGRA for any science reporter we know, because it depends.
Yeah.
You have to come through a lot of channels and then you will be
NGRA
taken where you will be taken.
Yes, sir, NGRI will be showing only 2-3 persons, not to me.
Mr. Somshekar would like to
Alright?
He is a science man, he will tell you that.
Yes, sir.
No, I think.
I'm a product from Andhra, that's why.
No, interestingly, I have a book written by this gentleman.
Thank
So you please don't be under the impression that nobody reads or nobody writes. In fact, in Business Land, I have quoted from that work in a story when the most recent earthquake happened. So, what happens in the media is that we are not always imagining that there is Mr. So-and-so, Ramalingeshwara Rao, who has done a lot of work. Today the media is big. There are so many people writing books, so many channels, so many institutions, so many scientists, so much of competition that perhaps you should be more proactive in telling us that you have done this. We are not searching all regularly about what and who's doing what. And also the way you communicate, the way I write a story is very important today. So I suggest that when you communicate this through a proper channel or send it to different publications about what you have done, this summary which will attract newspaper journalists who can write about it. Otherwise, when there is a disaster, there is an event, we go to people who talk to us in a very simple language, who explain so that we can write. We are not like you having 2 years to write a book. We have, for a print journalist, 10 hours. For a television journalist, on the spot. For online competition, even I don't have time. So I am looking at somebody, if she gives me some information quickly, I write. So this is a age in which we are living. So you have to be very proactive and tell people that you have done what you have done. So, but a lot of which you have written, I have also talked now about seismic maps, hazard zoning and all that, which have come into public domain. So you should be more proactive and take a bigger role.
Thank you, sorry, sir.
I'll end because you are from NGRI and I also went there. Your director told me once when there was an earthquake that we will give the information after 2 days. So I was a journalist with PTI, I said we have to report quickly. He said no, we'll put together all this and give it to you after 2 days. I said that is not the way newspapers work, but scientists work in that fashion. So please, scientists have to change a bit, not to produce papers for newspapers, but to react to the correct information quickly. Because I was telling the director that an earthquake or a pregnancy cannot be hidden. So please don't tell me you will give information after 48 hours, the world will know.
On the all India level, nobody is taking the concept of splay very seriously.
Concept of?
Splay, S-P-L-A-Y, at the two road junctions. And the electric pole sits right at the corner. Splay means at the two road junction for taking a free left. You have to, for example, if you have a 80 feet road, 20 feet, 20 feet. So you'll take a free left. So this concept is not being taken seriously by any state government to the best of my knowledge, especially Andhra Pradesh. Now in GVMC is now the biggest city. Now we have Volvo buses which are double axle, which are much longer. So what happens, even lorries, double loads, triple loads of sand are coming right into city limits. So if you people, I humbly request you, enlighten the state governments as well as all state governments by your resolutions or whatever. That splay should be taken at two road junctions, and the portion of the splay will go into the road junction. So the electric pole can be subsequently shifted. This is my humble appeal as a social activist. Thank you.
I think under this climate change negotiations, Visakhapatnam city, they are trying to implement that revised transportation plan. Please talk to this VMC, Visakhapatnam Municipal Corporation. I think they have some plans.
I have been trying for the past 2 months, no action. I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Mr. Prabhakar Sharma, a senior journalist, retired from Hindu, now he's a freelancer. He was also with the Indian Express. He developed some liking for North Coastal Andhra Pradesh and covered number of events here. Mr. Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Krishna Rao, Mr. Somsekhar, Mohammad, Professor Murthy, and Mr. Himanshu of NDTV. Ladies and gentlemen, so I confine myself to Visakhapatnam, North Andhra, as Mr. Krishna Rao said. I am glad this World Congress on Disaster Management is held in Visakhapatnam, a city which is prone to disasters, both natural and man-made. Here, the seasonal monsoons, both southwest monsoon and northeast monsoon, fail miserably, and we very eagerly await cyclones. Only cyclones bring us rains here. That's why We normally welcome cyclones, but last year it was different. Hudhud gave us a nightmarish experience. Then it flattened the entire city. Reporters could miss it because he was chief minister and he was giving us an overall picture of the happenings, and particularly at a time when the communications went haywire. So we learnt quite a few lessons from Hudhud, and which also serves as a fairly good example as far as the restoration activity is concerned, particularly with respect to power supply, which was restored in record time. Though huge towers holding high tension power lines collapsed and lay battered on the ground due to cyclone, immediately after the storm, excellent makeshift arrangements were made on a war footing to bring back near normalcy within a very short time, perhaps a couple of weeks or so. Vizag also had a close shave during tsunami over a decade ago. We are hearing more and more of earthquakes, cyclones, and also airplane crashes, all come under disasters all over the world of late. The main lesson we learnt during any disaster, not only Hudhud, was that with prior warning, we can prepare ourselves well enough to prevent loss of human life, if not loss of property.